Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session on 3 skills I'd wish I'd built at the start of my career. My name is Elmarie Grant. I'm the head of Synthesis Academy, and this session really is the rerun of a short presentation I delivered a couple of weeks at the GirlCode Global Summit. I'll talk a little bit about synthesis, the work that we do in GirlCode in a moment, but for the start, let me just deal with some housekeeping issues. We have a wonderful team behind the scenes who are helping us arrange this podcast and this webinar, and they will be muting you all just to make sure that we don't have some really strange background sounds coming in. So if you do have any questions, and you're welcome to ask them at any point in time during this presentation, please use the chat at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. You are welcome to interact with us in that way, and I'll be checking in periodically on the questions and deal with them as and when they come in. The other thing I'm going to do is also play around with another little piece of technology, which I'll introduce to you in a moment. But for that, if you want to do that in a minute, is to keep your browser open, because I am going to ask you to paste a link into your browser and communicate with us that way as well. So a little bit about synthesis. We are synthesis software technologies, and we work across a range of technologies and a variety of industries, helping our clients deliver the best possible solutions to their customers. We are an advanced AWS provider, the first on the continent, in fact, and we are very proud of that. But we don't just do cloud, we do a range of other things, and we have some very exciting projects in the pipeline. So if you have a moment, you're not already part of the synthesis team, please feel free to have a Google. The original source of this session was an organization called GirlCode, and we are very excited from a synthesis perspective to be partnering with GirlCode. GirlCode does extraordinary work in inviting and encouraging young women to join the sciences and technology professions. As you well know, science and technology are both vastly underrepresented by females, and actually getting our young women excited about job opportunities and career prospects in the space is very important to us. And so as part of their global summit, where they brought together a number of speakers, we chatted a little bit to them about some of the skills that they might need to best introduce themselves. At the end of this, we will also post a link to you about GirlCode. So if you do want to read more about the fantastic work they do and want to join with them, then you can. So I said to you, we're going to use a very nifty piece of technology, and this is what it is. What I'm going to ask you to do is paste this particular link into your browser, into your email or your web browser. And what that will do is it will take you through to a blank page where I'm going to ask a bunch of questions and you're going to have the opportunity to type your answers back at me. It's quite a fun way to get some audience interaction from you. You do have to give your name, but I promise the responses are actually all anonymous, so we won't disclose anything that you say to us. So it's really, really important. So while you do that, let me tell you a little bit about the topic for today. Synthesis was designated an essential provider when lockdown first started. And so while we've been working all through the supporting our customers, I must admit that I have been doing what I think most of South Africa is doing, and that's binge watching Netflix. And one of my favorite shows that I've just come across is something called Timeless. Now, the premise of the show isn't new. It's the idea that if we could build a time machine and go back in time, what would we change? And when I watched this, it really made me wonder, what is it that I would tell a young me, my younger self, 10 or 15 or even 20 years ago, that would become important in my life moving forward? And so when I thought about the topic for today's session, that really was where skills came from. And the idea that we look back upon the people that we were and say, what are the important things that I learned and how can I pay that forward? Can I introduce other people to these skills, introduction into the world, and hopefully give them some advice that they might find helpful. Right, hope you've all logged into Poll Everywhere and you are ready, because here is your first question. How are you feeling today? And all we're going to ask you is to just enter a word or a couple of words on how you think you are feeling today. Let's see if the responses are coming through. Going to see if we can get your responses through. If not, cool. Let's see, they're coming through. Activate them again. See if they come through now. There we go. We can see the first responses coming through. How are you feeling today? Let's begin. There we go. A couple of people saying they're tired. Good to be the word of the day. We'll wait for a couple more. Right, moving up. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. So my next question is this one. How long have you been part of the working world? When you now look at your screen, you should be seeing all these different options, and all you need to do is click on them and tell me how long you've been part of the working world. Just to get a sense of who has joined us on this particular session. Go. Still waiting for some answers to come in. Lovely. Okay, so interesting of these numbers that we are seeing, because what's interesting is that On this particular session, yes, the people that we have probably been part of the working world for slightly longer. Actually, the session really was intended for people who have not really yet joined the working world. I hope that you will still find it interesting and useful. And obviously, you will have your own views on some of the skills that you wish you had learned and deliberately cultivated right at the beginning, at the start of your career. So we'll look at that as well. Thank you very much for participating. Right. This is our beautiful planet Earth, the place where we live, a place where we spend a lot of time, and really some place that we are trying to get to know very well. We've explored from the highest mountaintops all the way down into the deepest seas, and every day we add to our knowledge of this planet. But for this session, I didn't want to look at where we are. I really wanted to look at where we are going to. And this is it. Not nearly as pretty as our home planet, I agree, but there you have it. So this is, of course, the planet Mars. And this is what we are aiming at. So since 1997, NASA has been sending robotic vehicles to this very lonely, very distant planet to help explore exactly what we can expect to find there and to learn a little bit more about what happens on the surface and under the surface of this planet. I've taken my inspiration for today's session from these robotic vehicles because I think they embody quite a lot of the work that as women we have to do on ourselves and the work world around us to really get entrenched in the workplace and specifically in this bold world of technology and science. The name of the talk today is The 3 Skills I Wish I'd Learned. A skill is defined as the ability to do something well or an expertise. So it's not a piece of knowledge, but it's actually something that you do or apply or execute. So I can confess that in lockdown, the skill that I have developed and that I have really perfected, I think, is ironing, which I never thought I would. But that really is just a result of being cooped up at home. So when I go think about skills and the skills that I think would have benefited me in my career and that I wish that I'd really spent time on actively cultivating, I'm drawing the inspiration for these 3 skills from the names of the NASA robotic vehicles or rovers. This is the first one. So in fact, this is a picture from the second robotic vehicle that was sent to Mars. And this particular robotic vehicle actually was one of twins, and they were called Spirit and Opportunity. So I'm going to sneak 2 skills into this one rover name. They landed in January 2004, and really they were our first glimpse of what this new, interesting and amazing planet could offer us. This picture is quite special. If you go and read up a little bit about the story of Spirit and Opportunity, you'll know that Opportunity actually far exceeded any of the expectations that the scientists have for how long it would be in service and the kind of data that it would collect for us. And in fact, this picture is the last picture ever sent back by the Mars rover Opportunity very early on in last year in February 29. It's quite a sad story, actually. And actually, NASA did quite a lot of work around saying goodbye and sending off this very brave little rover once it finally died. So what do I mean by spirit as a skill that we have to develop? Well, for me, spirit really is around understanding who we are. Doing some deep work around getting to know ourselves. The reality is it doesn't matter what technical skill we have or how well we can function in the workplace. If we don't really understand ourselves, what we have to offer, and very often what our weakness areas for development are, we're going to find it very hard to really integrate and really be successful. And so the first skill that I wish I had really spent time on was building this relationship with myself. Really getting to know who I am, what the things are that made me tick, what the things were that scared me, and what the lies were that I told myself. So when I talk about spirit, I really am asking women to be brave. I'm asking women to really look inside themselves and say, what are the stories I tell myself that have helped me? And what are the stories I tell myself that have hurt me? We all have a little voice in the back of our head that will tell us things. And sometimes we'll do something or interact with someone, and that voice in the back of our head will say, you are not good enough. You don't really know what you're doing. You've never done this before. And that little tape recorder that plays in the back of our head then becomes the narrative that frames our interactions from that point forward. And not often are those narratives actually correct. Very often they are lies we tell ourselves. And learning how to recognize this narrative and how to switch it off when it's not helpful, when it's not real, and when it's not true is an incredibly helpful skill to really help us understand who we are. But it goes further than that. It goes around nurturing the sides in ourselves that we also know are strong and true. All the weirdness that you are, all the wonderfulness that you are makes you unique. And those are the reasons why the world needs you. The opportunity the Spirit rover may not have been there the longest. It may not have been the best rover NASA had ever developed, but it served an incredibly unique purpose, which was to give us our first glimpse of this world. So deliberately developing the skill to understand and know ourselves, for me, would have been incredibly helpful. It would also have helped me to not stay in situations that were not helpful to me. I made some career changes because I realized that the positions that I found myself in were not actually the things I wanted to do or the things that fulfilled me. But I stayed because it felt like I'd made such a massive investment already that I really couldn't walk away. And that was one of the narratives that needed to change. So recognizing those are incredibly important. So what are some of the things that we can do to help build the spirit and to help us identify and nurture the spirit that is unique within each of us? For starters, don't be afraid. Be brave. Be brave enough to really confront all your demons, everything that you are. Be brave enough to do the deep self-work. And there are a number of ways in which you can do that. Synthesis, one of the programs we've recommended, is something called future authoring, self-authoring. And it's a really quick and easy way to get in touch with some of those pieces of yourself that you may not look at every single day, but actually define who you are and how you interact with the world around you. The second thing that you can do is find a good mentor. Mentors really are like a mirror that you hold up to yourself, something that reflects both the best and the worst in you. It's not like the mirror in the change room where you walk in and you put on the jacket and it makes you look all thin and beautiful. That's not the purpose of a mirror. A real mirror is the one in your bedroom where you put that same jacket on and you go, why on earth did I actually buy this? I know you know what I'm talking about. That's the kind of mirror we want. We want the mirror that helps us identify the things in ourselves that need work, and then that helps give us the tools to actually work on those characteristics or those behaviors so that we can be better. So find yourself a mentor who's able to articulate this to you, who's able to be gentle but honest with you, and who's able to give you those tools. You don't need to have one mentor for everything. What I have found in my career certainly is that I have had workplace mentors that have helped my career tremendously, but I've also had personal mentors who've helped me in my personal career or my personal life choices. You all know that being a woman, some of you being mothers, some of you being partners, those are all challenging environments, and we do often need help to be the best versions of ourselves in situations that we can be. So finding a mentor that can help you and can help you navigate that terrain is really helpful. The final thing that really helps you connect with yourself is to seek feedback. And while your mentor might be able to do that, feedback can also come from all sorts of other different places. And actually, it helps us see the elements of ourselves that may not be immediately clear or easily identifiable to ourselves. You may have a behavior or a point of view that you didn't know came across the way that it did. And actually having someone giving you that feedback is hugely helpful so that you can decide whether that is a position that you want to hold or actually one that doesn't reflect what you really truly believe or feel. Feedback isn't always easy to hear. It can be sometimes delivered a little bit clumsily, and so we often think that it hurts our feelings. But if we really scratch beyond the surface and take feedback for what it is, an opportunity to learn and grow, the spirit within us, then it becomes a really useful tool. And I encourage you to actively seek feedback, ask for it. What could I have done better? How could I have done this differently? Does what I'm doing now make sense? Does it align with who I am and who I want to be? And taking that feedback and really doing something with it. I will say this, feedback is a little bit like perfume. It's not to be drunk or internalized, but it's to be used to enhance yourself. So don't take that feedback as poison. That is not its intention. It really is there to make you better. So that's spirit. Now, opportunity has crept in here because spirit and opportunity really are twins. They do go together. It's not the events of our lives that make our lives difficult. It's the way that we respond to events. And every time one of these events happen, we have an opportunity to choose how we to respond to that. And that's the piece of spirit that connects to opportunity that I want to speak about. Very often things will happen to us and it's very easy to go, why me and why now? And those are very often valid questions because it helps us identify our role in a particular situation. But more than that, we need to look at the opportunity and say, how can I take what is happening and build it into something positive, something that makes me stronger, more resilient, more focused, more confident, and more me. And that's the real opportunity that lies within exploring our spirit. I'll share a quick story from early on in my career. I used to be employed as a project manager for a large IT company. And very early on, I realized that I did good work, but I ended up with projects that were already over budget, where there were massive staffing issues, where we couldn't get the resources needed, where the customers were disgruntled, where the tech didn't quite work the way that it should. And I would have these projects and try and pull them into some kind of shape. And after the third or fourth time we managed to deliver a project like that and managed to save it, I became a bit disgruntled. I felt a little bit like where projects came when they were limp and hurting. And I was quite offended by this. I had a chat with my mentor at the time and said, I really want to break out of this idea that I'm the person that you can just saddle up with broken and miserable projects. I want to get the cool, nice, interesting projects where things go well and where we are successful. And my mentor looked at me and he said, don't you understand? You are the hero. You are the person that takes these projects and turn them around and deliver them. They're not where projects come to die. You are where projects come to get a second chance. And that one piece of insight gave me such confidence. It really made me completely relook what I was doing and how I was doing it. And it made me brave. It meant that the next time I got a project that really was in a bad space, I felt confident enough to say, yes, we can deliver this, but we will need more budget, or we need more time, or I want a very specific resource that can help me with this, because that's how we save this. So the way that we use opportunity, the way that we interpret the events of our lives have a massive effect on how we finally manage to play out those things. And I encourage you to use every opportunity that you can to actually switch and see how else you can frame it. Time for a quick poll. The next question is this. What can you do to best get in touch with your spirit? We already have some questions on the board, but please go ahead and ask your own. What you'll also see is that as you add some more some answers here, you can up or downvote them, and please feel free to do so. What are the things that you do that makes you get in touch with who you really are, with that person that you are inside, and helps unleash that? We'll give you a couple of moments just to switch back, and we'll see your answers start coming through. There we go. Draw and paint, we like that. Dance, meditate. What I love about these responses is that they really all speak to the creative in us. Those areas that are not just about transactional interactions or the things that we do with others, but there's really a quiet and a safe space for us to really connect into who we are and who we can be. I'm going to give you a couple more chances to add any other responses here. All right, and then let's move on. So in moving on, I want to talk about selfie games. We know that it didn't actually happen if you didn't take a picture and post it on Instagram, or if you didn't take a selfie of you doing it while you were doing it. But in actual fact, what you'll find is that this is the coolest selfie ever taken. This is NASA's Mars Curiosity rover that is currently on Mars. And this is the first selfie it sent back from the red planet. I think that's pretty cool. We can see the rover quite nicely. We can see exactly how intricate it is, how it's built to be able to maneuver quite easily, and then also see what this marvelous, amazing alien planet looks like. So if the first of my skills were spirit and opportunity, the second skill that I really wish that I had deliberately cultivated is curiosity. Now, those of you who are parents will know that the most exhausting phase of childhood is when your child goes through the why phase. Why? Why is this happening? And as you answer, the answer becomes a new why. That curiosity is exhausting. It is hard work. But we also know that that's the phase in which we learn most, the phase in which every single part of our learning in our brains are accelerated. And as adults, the more we learn and the more we start specializing both in life and in work, we tend to exclude a lot of possibilities because our curiosity becomes very focused on our areas of work. And I would like to encourage you today to start thinking more broadly, to open those horizons again. Curiosity for me earlier on in my career would have meant that I would have seen opportunities faster. It meant that I would have learned new skills that would actually be very useful later on in a more meaningful way. And that actually things that I brushed off because I didn't think I was really interested became really core portions and parts of my career going forward. So building this curiosity is incredibly, incredibly important. Another personal story, just to show you how curiosity in really random places can be helpful. My very first job was as a secretary, as it is. It's very junior, and really all I had to do was answer the phone, take some notes, type some letters, and then finally file them. I'm not a great fan of filing, and it was my least favorite thing to do in the whole wide universe. So I would always put it off until a Friday afternoon so that I could have my cup of coffee and file away. But then one day, as I was filing something, I realized that the filing documents that I was handling were quite important information, and they talked a little bit around the strategy of the company, where the organization was going, how they were staffing it, and how things were working. And as I started filing, I started getting curious about the projects we were working on. And what came out of that was the opportunity to start a whole new division of that particular company. It was an idea that was formed out of a filing cabinet, out of reading material that otherwise I would just have filed and not have been curious about at all. Our curiosity can really work for us in all sorts of ways, but we have to be open. We have to want to learn. We have to want to go and scratch and put ourselves in those positions. So how do we really cultivate the sense of curiosity, both in ourselves and in the people around us? Well, the first thing is ask questions. Don't take anything on face value. I know that we've had lots of practice with all the information around COVID-19 coming out. Is it real? Is it not true? When is lockdown happening? When is it not ending? And that's actually a great skill that we've been developing in this time, not even knowing it. But let's take it further. When we see information, let's ask the why, the what, the when, the where, and the how questions. Let's really dig in. Let's really unpack things to see if we can understand them better, to learn more. And what's interesting about curiosity is once you start getting curious, you never stop. It really does perpetuate itself. Ask people about what interests them. Ask people about what they're working on, what fascinates them, what is interesting, what they've learned. Most people are very happy to share that information with you. They love talking about the things that they've learned, and you'll be amazed at the things that you can learn, even from people that you wouldn't have expected it from. People have such incredible life stories and have been to so many incredible places and through extraordinary experiences, things we never know. And asking them questions is actually a really great way of getting to know them, but also building our own curiosity about the world around us. My second top tip for building your curiosity is to read. Read everything and anything you can lay your hand on. A lot of people say to me, but I don't have time to read. And I know that that's true. Our environment is incredibly busy and incredibly stuffed with other information and sources of information. Me, I make time every day to read. I read before I go to bed, and I find it incredibly relaxing and useful. But I also try to read other things as I come across it. If you're not a great reader and don't want to do it that way, I highly recommend things like audiobooks. I mentioned my newly acquired skill of ironing earlier on. What I now do is when I put on my ironing, I actually put on an audiobook, and that way I can kill two birds with one stone and still feed my spirit while I'm doing something completely mind-numbing. So go and find different ways and opportunities of engaging with the information around you. If you're more of a podcast person or you're more of a quick webinar person, then by all means engage in those. But the idea is to find new sources of information, find people that you find interesting and inspiring, and read or access their stories and what they've written or put in place. Really, really helpful. The other one that is harder to do in lockdown, but that I think we will be able to get back to, is this idea of spending our time with people that help us be curious about the world. And actually, children are a really, really good place to start. It's very easy to see the world through their eyes and see how curious they are about every single thing. And so spending time with them and seeing the world the way that they see it, or asking them questions about how they interpret life, or what they would like to learn next, is a nice place for us as adults sometimes to start if we don't know where else to start. But people will be your best source. And look at people to include in that circle that really inspire you. As women, people like Oprah have been on the scene for a long time, but Brene Brown is another super inspiring woman. Maya Angelou, who's published so many incredible works that really help us understand who we are, where we're going. Michelle Obama's recent book, Becoming, highly recommended. I've recently been introduced to Glennon Doyle, who wrote a book called Untamed, which, by the way, is available on audiobooks. But find women who inspire you, because their inspiration, their journeys will make you curious about what else there is in the world out there and really help you build and stretch that curiosity. It's something that, with myself, I still constantly have to actively and deliberately invest in, to go and find new resources, to go and find other ways to make sure that I don't just stay on planet Earth, but I'm actually reaching out to Mars, to all these other amazing places where I can be curious and learn a lot and new stuff. The next rover I want to talk about is this one. It doesn't exist yet. It's being built at the moment, and it's called Perseverance. It's headed for the red planet in June of this year, and so far it looks like NASA will be able to meet that deadline despite all the challenges in the world that we live in. So other than spirit, opportunity, and curiosity, perseverance for me is a life skill that really needs investing in and conscious thought. We talk about the resilience that we need in difficult times. But part of that is also knowing when to continue, when to just keep going. And that's really what perseverance is. Times will always be tough. There will always be something that you struggle with, whether it is a difficult project, whether it is technology that isn't quite working the way that you want it to, whether it's a relationship that is being challenging. But times will always be tough. And the only way to survive it is to get through it. But not just to get through it, to actually thrive your way through it. And perseverance is a really great way to do this. It's old-fashioned grit, just grinding your teeth and keeping going. Now, I'm not suggesting that we should keep going at the wrong things or keep going at those things that are not good for us. But certainly there are times when we do need to make sure that we put one foot in front of the other and keep going. So how do we build this sense of perseverance? How do we build this skill? How do we get ourselves to be stronger and be able to go faster, build this emotional and intelligent stamina that we need to survive in the world? It's impossible to do this when we are not energized. And so the first thing we need to think about when we want to build our sense of perseverance and resilience is to say, how do I actually re-energize? How do I fill up my bucket again so that I can have some reserves to give to the world around me and to others? There are a number of things that you can do. My first piece of advice is figure out your energy cycles. If you are a night owl, or whether you are one of those incredibly annoying people who wake up fresh first thing in the morning, and yes, now you know which one I am, figure out when you are at your best. This sounds like a very simple thing, but it's actually really powerful because it helps you block your time and apply tasks to the time of the day when you are at your best. I will definitely never, ever be the person at 7:30 in the morning to run a radio show. I will be completely incoherent and will make no sense whatsoever. But give me a late afternoon or an early evening and I'm at my best. And I know this. And so it's much easier for me to say, if I have a large piece of difficult work to do or thinking work to do, how do I schedule it into my day to get the best out of me and to deliver the best that I can be? So figure out what your energy cycles are and use it to your advantage. Look after your body. This is incredibly important. Very often the first thing we do when we get busy is to stop exercising. Make sure that your body functions properly. Exercise in whatever format you can. With lockdown, it can be anything from now running between or exercising between 6 to 9 in the morning, but there's a lot of stuff you can do at home as well. I recently came across an exercise video designed for older folks in old age homes, actually presented by an older lady, and it was so much fun. That's become my go-to exercise routine during lockdown. Again, the curiosity that leads you in really interesting places. But make sure that you look after your body. Sleep enough. Incredibly important. We vastly underrate the importance of sleep and how it energizes us, resets our brain function, resets all our natural body rhythms. Please make sure that you get enough sleep. Drink enough water. We know this one, but it's very difficult to do. And tea and coffee do not count as water. It actually has to be the real thing on the rocks. And that's how you rehydrate yourself. Find a hobby. It's a really great way to take your mind off things. And I was really encouraged to see your answers earlier on about how you connect with your spirit. Dancing and drawing, doing all of those things is a fantastic way to make space just for yourself so that you can refill and re-energize yourself and then go back into the world that you live in. The other great way to make sure that you build your resilience is to get perspective on whatever your challenges are. And this again is where a mentor can be incredibly helpful. Sometimes we are so close to a problem that it's really hard to see what the next step is or where we should be going or what we should be doing. But a mentor can help that. A mentor can actually open up some of those possibilities for us and just help us reframe it, look at it from a different angle and find a way through it. So make sure that you look after yourself, after your body, but also after your mind in that way. I do also want to just make this one distinction here. I've been reading quite a lot about this idea of self-care, especially while we are in self-isolation. There's a difference between self-care and self-pamper, right? Pampering is when I go to the hairdresser and sit there and have my hair done. Absolutely necessary, fabulously wonderful, and something we desperately miss. But self-care is something else. Self-care is something that nurtures your spirit. And so please don't confuse the two. It's very easy to do all the things that are pampering that feel good and wonderful, and absolutely there is a place and a time for them. But self-care is about nurturing that spirit. So when I go to the hairdresser, I take my book with and I read the things that nurture my spirit. So getting up in the morning to go for a run definitely is not fun. It does not feel like pampering. but I know that it is self-care. So remember that when you make that distinction, you're actually enabling yourself to do the things that might not feel great at the time, but that is actually the things that are really good for you. Time for another quick poll. What is your favorite way to re-energize? How do you make sure that you keep that bucket full? As before, as the responses come in, you can go and upvote them or downvote them. Please feel free to add your own, but give this a little bit of thought. What is your favorite way to re-energize? Not just to pamper yourself, but actually to refill that bucket, to give yourself the care that you need so that you are able to continue to be strong and work well in the world. Running, absolutely. Like I say, not my favorite exercise at all, but something that I do find helpful. And what's interesting is that very often, because your body is busy doing one thing, your mind can take over. Crocheting, absolutely. What a fantastic hobby. Another very creative thing. And what's interesting about crochet and things like knitting is that repetitive physical movement actually frees up your mind to that Zen space where you can actually, your subconscious can work through things and come up with new and interesting solutions. Journaling, what a fantastic way to get what's going on in your head on paper. It's a really good way to take the noise that we very often sit with, all this narrative, all the conversation that we have with ourselves, and put it somewhere so that we can actually be open and have a little bit of space and can breathe freely again. So another great way to re-energize ourselves and reconnect with ourselves. Any other interesting, unusual ways to re-energize? Yep, walk in nature, absolutely. It's interesting, I read something the other day that talks about when we are outside, taking our shoes off and really feeling what is under our feet, connecting all the nerve endings in our feet with what's really nature. So walking on beautiful soft grass or out in nature is really a great way of grounding ourselves and re-energizing ourselves. And thank you very much for all of those responses. Perseverance is not an easily gained skill. It comes at a cost. It is not something I think that we know that we have until we actually have to apply it. But the resilience that underlies perseverance is something that we can build, is something that we can practice, is that ability that we can continuously invest in to make ourselves stronger. And that is a really, really special thing to be. So this is a quick summary of our chat today. I hope that you have found this interesting, that it reminds you of the work that we have to do with ourselves and the responsibility we have to really build our own world and to go and explore what else there is out there so that we can be strong and amazing. My 3 skills I really wish I had built deliberately at the start of my career: an opportunity, curiosity, and perseverance, and things that continuously I seek to build and develop and further entrench in daily life. You are welcome to send through any questions that you have or any comments. We will send you some more information at the end of this session as a thank you, so that you go and can dive into some of the resources I've mentioned, so that you can play around with some of the different opportunities that there are. But thank you very much for joining us, and I hope that you have a really fantastic Friday, a wonderful weekend where you can get to relax, to reconnect with yourself, your loved ones, spend some time just looking after yourself, and have a fantastic re-energizing weekend so that we can see you again next week. I'll wait a couple of moments just in case there are questions coming through. You are welcome to stick around and have a chat with me. Otherwise, I wish you all of the best and thank you.